Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Games and Writers. And I'm supposed to have S.J. Varengo co-hosting here, but he appears to have been co-opted by a crowd of waving Smurfs.
This happens to me all the time.
Let's see if we can fix that. Huh. You know what? I don't actually know why the... Oh, yes, I do. There you are. But back to the Smurfs, quick.
I still look like a Smurf.
I was like, oh, wait, actually, nothing has changed.
Same blue skin, the whole 9 yards.
Same thing, yeah. So, speaking of Smurfs, I can't actually come up with a better way to open the show. Can you? I mean, it's Smurfs, right?
It's Smurfs.
Yeah. So, turns out, this is a town in Germany. And that is unfortunate because my German is non-existent. So I'm just going to make up pronunciations for these towns and whatnot because I'm going to mispronounce them anyway. Anyway, they came covered in blue paint, donning red and white hats, nearly 3,000 in all. Their goal? Simple, to break the world record for the largest group of people dressed as, you guessed it, Smurfs. The group, organized the event in Germany on Saturday near the border of Switzerland. They had strict rules. In order to be counted, participants couldn't show any non-blue skin. They could dress as Papa Smurf or Smurfette. Normal Smurfs, they were okay too, but you couldn't come dressed as the evil wizard, Gargamel. I mean, that was actually off limits.
It would cause panic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it actually would.
With that many Smurfs in one place and a Gargamel, chaos.
Yeah, so the Record Institute of Germany verified the number on its website. It was, what was the exact number? 2,762 people showed up. And apparently each one of them got a certificate for having participated in this World Smurf event. Of course, the Guinness World Book of Records has yet to confirm the feat. And it's probably because I don't give a shit. But anyway, but it did.
We don't have a Smurf category, damn it.
And there are definite reasons for that. But the standing record, though, was broken, which was actually 2,510 people in the UK in 2009. The last time first attempted to break the record was in 2016, and that didn't work out so well. But I did want to pop over here to that page, which is why it was up in the first place. And you know what? I can actually go out of that and just pop back to... Hey, now you're in the way. What the hell's happening here? So I've never seen...
Got way better.
It just proves that I've never seen SJ and a Smurf in the same place at the same time. Just saying. I just wanted to point that out. All right, here we go, though. We have... we see him waving there. And here's some of the pictures I wanted to bring up. Look at this.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Whoa! That seems like that shade of blue seems a little off to me.
Yeah.
That's kind of between...
It's like a turquoise.
Yeah.
Kinda.
It's like what Voldemort would look like if he were really cold. Oh, wow. Okay.
Never saw a Smurf dressed like that before.
Wait a minute now. Okay, that's actually a light blue bodysuit. Now, she's cheating. Okay. She's cheating. I can see the wrinkles. Either that or... Well, I shouldn't be insensitive. That might be your skin, right? Now.
It could be. She could be a senior Smurf.
I'm sorry, ma'am. That was insensitive. There we go. That's some blue.
That's Smurf blue right there.
There we go. Yep. That guy has it down, too.
I
I see non-blue skin, though. Look at these hands.
Get out.
Out. Yeah. Oh my God, that's frightening. I'm moving on.
That is.
Yeah.
Back to her again, turquoise Smurf.
All right, and then we have look like a group photo of the 3,000 lucky people. I doubt any of them actually got lucky after this thing, to be honest with you. But that's just me being insensitive.
Or any time prior to that in their life. Yeah, that's right. Too many Smurfs. I think that actually counts as a Smurf festation when you get that many together.
What's the cure? Is there a
Gargamel? Get him in there.
Yeah, so I think that was actually a tactical error on the part of the organization or the town or whoever the hell put this thing on. I mean, that's just, I don't know. I don't want to be closed-minded, but
it is important to keep an open mind when dealing with Smurfs.
Yeah, I mean, you have to.
It's a different culture. We don't understand the ins and outs. Oh, that's probably not a good term to use.
And that's the other thing about Smurfs. It's like there's something about it that screams inappropriate humor, and yet they're Smurfs. Like,
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
yeah.
I don't know. Well,
terrible. I actually like slotted in my lifespan so that I really never had too much Smurf exposure. Like, obviously, it was way after my youth, but my kids somehow missed the whole Smurf thing when they were growing up. I mean, I saw lots of other horrible things, but not Smurfs.
Well, I'm sure you made up for it, you know. I mean,
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Smurfs are one thing, but you know, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking with someone the other day about like the Nickelodeon shows from when my kids were coming up, and some of them were just freaking great. Like I don't know if you ever saw Rocko's Modern Life.
No.
No. Well, Rocko was, I believe, a wallaby. He had a pet dog, and his best friend was a cow named Heifer. But there was just the show, and his neighbors were a pair of frogs named Mr. and Mrs. Big Head. I mean, but there was one episode I remember in particular where they did an homage to The Shining, the movie, and Heifer is somehow in this hotel, and at one point these two little girls are like, Heifer, come play with us forever and ever. And I'm thinking little kids aren't going to get any of this. This is obviously written for adults, specifically for me. But yeah, that was a good one. Oh, there you go. And the cartoon itself was drawn, as you can see, in a very, you know, kind of expressionist almost style, and it was just a brilliant show.
Let's see if we can get this up here. This wasn't planned, so I don't know how exactly this is gonna work. I don't know if I might have to change an input or something here.
For me.
Listen to that voice.
I wonder who it's from.
Well, who it's from?
Good old Mum. Triple A Australian Outback beef.
Oh my God, his best friend's a cow and he's got teeth.
That seems insensitive.
That's Heifer.
I better put this one in my secret place.
Which kind of makes Heifer a cannibal.
His secret place.
His secret place.
He's got. Bye.
Oh, look, and Heifer's off.
Ooh.
I don't even remember this episode. This is great.
Here, my little tasty ones.
Are you tired of being stepped on, swatted, and otherwise pressed like an ignominious speck in a swirling mass of pain and suffering? Just tired of being broke?
Now you're talking my language.
Make you filthy, stinking rich. Win big bucks the fun and easy way. So, only Xbox got me 2.1 million. For no good reason.
I'll fill your pockets with peace of mind.
Yeah, peace of mind don't pay the rent. This garbage ain't even fit for a fly. Man, what I wouldn't do for a real burger. Hello.
Oh,
Shoo, dirty flies. Shoo, fly away.
Just try and make me Say, what are you trying to do?
I was just trying to cook my burger, really.
Oh, yeah? You could have killed me. You gotta watch where you're swinging that thing.
Yes, sorry. Here, let me help you. There. Good as new.
Yeah, and let's keep it that way. Boom.
Oh dear. You alright?
Yeah, I mean... Ah! My neck! My leg! My leg! My leg! You're gonna pay for this, bear! You're gonna pay big! I'll see you in court!
He sure got his knickers in a twist. Just having a bad day, I guess.
That was
So there
great.
you have it.
That was great.
Rocco's Modern Life.
Whoa, infinity.
that was pretty
Infinity. All right. Well, Smurfs, Rocco. What else you got?
I don't know. That's a good start. Let's see. Maybe we should talk a little bit about some format changes to the Games and Writers Show.
Yes. All right. Let's do that. So, let's start at the beginning. Trying to give people some context here. So it hadn't been that long ago now. What do we say? A couple months that I was like, yeah, I'm going to play some games on Twitch, man. Which I did for a while, and it was fun. I like games and whatnot, and Twitch is a great platform for that if you want to stream your game, if you want to build a community of other gamers, etc. But of course, and it was inevitable, I suppose, that eventually I would begin putting something writing related into it. And Twitch is not a great platform for writers, as it turns out. And I was like, okay, is there anywhere else I can take this? And turns out, yes. There are several platforms that you can do live streaming, and where the platform for writers are, where there's a greater congregation of readers. I mean, not that game streamers don't read, but that's not why they're on the platform, right? To read books, they're there to play games. And the two main was YouTube and Facebook. And I already have a Facebook following, but I don't have a YouTube following. So I was like, well, let's just go where the existing audience is, which is Facebook. And so I got set up with some broadcasting software, bought some equipment, and made a logo, had some intro made, and all that stuff. And it just started kind of spinning out of control. But it was fun. It was in a fun way. Then I started inviting other guests, because what am I going to sit there and talk about by myself for however many times per week? And the show was originally called Games with Writers, because my original idea on Twitch was that I would have other writers who were interested in gaming come on with me, and we would play games and discuss writing as we were doing it, just have a good time. Well, it grew beyond that, so it didn't quite fit the title, because never once had I actually broadcasted anything with myself and another writer playing games. So it was just like Games with Writers makes no sense. So it changed to Games and Writers, because that sort of broadened the field a little bit. As the show's progressed from there, even that name isn't completely accurate, because I don't know if we've ever talked about games either.
Right. I think when we did my interview, which I believe was the first, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
While we were setting up, you and I talked for about a half an hour about games. Just for something to talk about while we were testing the equipment and everything. Then we got on the air and talked about writing for the entire however long we were on.
So, yeah, I think at that point the writing was kind of on the wall.
So to speak.
Yeah.
Unintentionally clever.
But I'm hesitant. We've actually talked about changing the name altogether. I still kind of like the name, partly because games and gaming doesn't necessarily just mean actual what most people think of as games. Video games. That can be all kinds of things. You can even use it as more of an ironic term. Plus, all the logo and stuff is made.
You know, that's why the Captain Kangaroo Show ended up being called the Captain Kangaroo Show. They came to it and said, it's the Captain Kangaroo Show, and all the logo, because that's the stupidest name I ever heard. But the logos are done, Captain.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, so I mean, it's right now is just going to stay that way, and we'll see how it goes. Because I mean, that's the other thing. I don't know where it's going to grow from here, and it's so early on that, hey, I could change it now, and then it be something completely different. I end up doing a name change every month. You know, it could get kind of insane. So, getting back to my original timeline, I guess, was started interviewing people, most of whom were writers, and then after the first show I did with Scott, we started talking about it, and it was fun for us, and people seemed to like watching it. And it also brought to mind, well, what else am I going to do for all this time besides have guests? And one of those things could be have a co-host. And, you know, at least on some of the shows, especially if we're interviewing certain people, it always helps to have like to have a third person, like, you know, two hosts and a guest, for example. It just seems more dynamic in a way. And so he said no, he wouldn't do it. And I said, well, I'll have you killed. And he's like, I don't care. I'm still not going to. And I said,
that could be the best possible outcome, actually.
He's like, well, thank you. I mean, you shouldn't have. No,
save me the trouble of growing old and dying, you know? It's a lot of work.
You know, I haven't been feeling all that well, so, you know, I mean, yeah. But after he sobered up, and he was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And so here we are. This is our first co-hosted show, and as you can tell, things are a little bit rough around the edges. But honestly, part of me doesn't want to lose that.
No.
I sort of like watching shows where it's not too slick, where, I mean, they have it together enough to where it's fun to watch, but it's not like, oh, this is a network produced thing. It's too smooth. You know,
right.
Sort of like you get a salesman and he's just a little too good, and you're kind of like, I'm out, you know.
Right,
you know?
right.
Like, I'm doing this for you. Like, what do I have to do to get you in this car? Kind of thing, you know. Kind of makes you run. So I don't ever want to lose maybe that spontaneity and stuff, you know, where that live feel, even if it is a recorded show, where, you know, things could go wrong, and I'm not going to necessarily fix them in post-production, because that's fun to watch. Yeah, it really is. So yeah, that kind of brings us up to date. That's what we're doing. As I say, this is our first co-hosted show. I'm sure down the road bring in some guests. We already have one plan to be talking to an excellent editor, and she's done a lot of work for like Northern Lake Publishing. She's done work for Scott. She's done work for me. Done work for a lot of her credentials are impeccable. Great lady. And she'll be on with us coming up soon, later this month.
And unlike either of us, she knows how to read.
Yes.
Which is very helpful if you're going to edit books.
Yeah. I'm hoping that, you know, she'll be able to help me out. Like, I have a lot of things I need deciphered, like my birth certificate, and, you know,
exactly.
I'm not really, you know, I'm not actually sure if it's me, or I don't even know what my name is. People tell me, but I don't, you know, I can't check. So, kind of at their mercy, and she'll be able to clear that up for me once and for all. Something that has dogged me for all of my 21 years.
And Wink. She likes dogs, so that works too.
And she likes dogs. Yeah, so
if it's dogging you, see, I was doing the play on words. With us, you get bad puns.
Yes. So yeah, this is just the high quality kind of humor you're going to be able to look forward to for the next 75 years. Yay!
Yes, because it's our own show and no one can cancel it, so you're going to have to listen. And
we don't even have a sponsor, so we don't even have to worry about them, you know, pissing them off. It's just, you don't like it, you know, hey. You know.
And that brings us to the mystery topic that I was teasing you with earlier. When we're talking about whether you like it or not, you and I talked...
Oh, I like it.
privately not too long ago about the emergence of sensitivity readers.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And
I remember that discussion very
yes.
well.
And that took us down several roads, and I was hoping we could explore some of those.
Well, I'm out. No, let's do it.
The microcosm issue is this specific thing, this invention, if you want to call it that, of people who are like beta readers or advanced copy readers, but their specific goal is to read your book and then tell you all the things in it that are going to offend people. And from my point of view, that seems a little bit too much like censorship. And I kind of feel like, don't get me wrong, I lean in the liberal direction in almost all aspects of my life, but I feel like the paranoia over, should I even open my mouth? Should I even write this story that I need to tell? Because I'm afraid someone's feelings are going to get hurt, or it's going to trigger an emotion or something like that. And it seems like books have been written for a very long time without worrying about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Can you imagine someone coming to Hemingway and saying, "I'm going to be your sensitivity reader"? He'd have punched him in the mouth, you know?
Yeah, and they're doing it now to his work, but he's not here to defend himself is the problem.
Right.
So,
right.
But no, I completely agree with you. My politics are pretty mixed. Like, I have positions on the left, I have positions more on the right, I have a lot in the middle. So I feel very partyless most of the time, which makes elections kind of, not all elections are are difficult. Sometimes you know for sure. But a lot of times elections are difficult for me because I can see both sides of a lot of different issues, So, but on this particular, as far as I'm concerned, this issue is also partyless. Because I don't really understand what I kind of see, and I don't want to get conspiratorial, but it's almost like an assault on free speech. And we definitely, there's something to be said about getting better about respecting other groups, particularly like historically marginalized groups.
Absolutely,
we want to be sensitive. Just in general, I don't think it's a bad thing to be nicer to people anymore, but that's not the point, really. I mean, the point in a free society is that you have the freedom to speak your mind, whether that is in verbally or in writing, because we're talking about mostly about writing, because that's what we are, and that's really what we're talking about. And the beauty of free speech, when it's been practiced throughout history, is that it does have a way of weeding out stupid people. And they say stupid things and they suffer the consequences, and the good thing about that, generally speaking, is that having brought that to the public eye, even through the actions of an idiot, allows us to talk about the issue. And that's what really bothers me. It's not that I want people to say hateful things, but if you prevent all hateful things, or things that are viewed as our current society to be hateful, which is another point I want to make later, you prevent the conversation from taking place. And
absolutely.
And that's a problem.
It is, because there's probably thoughts and ideas that are waiting to be formed that are going to happen during the dialogue that won't happen if everybody's just sitting around being nice. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If everybody's worried completely that everything or anything that they say could potentially be offensive, and like you said, there's a need for sensitivity, and I'm all for it, but there are times when you're going to talk about or write about things that someone is going to find offensive. I guess I'll go ahead and tell the specific story as it applied to my book, The Count of Carolina. I had a reviewer who very much enjoyed the first book, The Beauty of Bucharest, but was unable to finish the second book because there was a character in it who suffered abuse at the hands of friends of her father or acquaintances of her father, and at a young age, starting at age 10. I did not write this because it's something I think is cool. I didn't write it because I wanted to, tell a story that would appeal to pedophiles. I wrote it because this is what happened to this character to make her what she became. It was crucial to the story. And I think I talked in the first interview a little bit about how difficult it was for me to write it, because I knew as I was writing it, holy cow, this is a horrible thing to have gone through.
Right.
But it made the character that it happened to who she became. The character that it happened to is Nicole Porter, who is the central figure in all of the stories. So to me, it was important early in the series for everyone to get a picture of what formed Nicole's mindset and allowed her to become an assassin.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And to respond to that, I have a couple points. One is that if you don't talk about really sensitive, horrible things that actually do happen, in a way, you almost invalidate the experience of people who have had that. Mm-hmm. Now, some people who have had that just don't want to hear about it. I mean, that's a trigger for them, and they just don't want to deal with it. And I understand that, and I want to respect that. But there are other people, for example, people who have experienced some sort of sexual abuse. Sometimes hearing about those things that have happened to other people makes them feel, and to some extent, speaking with a little bit of experience, not as drastic as many, but it makes you understand that you're not alone. Mm-hmm. Like this is, it's not normal, but there's nothing wrong with you. You know what I mean? It's on the person who did it. It's on the perpetrators. It's not on you. So there's that danger. The other thing is that by forcing conversations underground, you don't actually stop them from happening. You just keep them out of the public eye.
Right.
And the danger behind that is that it breeds resentment from the people who feel they no longer have a voice. And I think we saw that played out in large part in the last election, last presidential election. And also, by driving underground, you create a brand of extremism. Because when you take away the voice from a certain group of people, even groups that we may consider odious, you make them resentful, and that creates a brand of extremism, and it increases their ability to recruit. In some cases, increases their appeal to other groups that may normally have been more moderate, but because they're faced with this culture of oppression in their eyes, they're going to react to that very strongly. The third thing would be that times change. So one thing that is things that are politically incorrect now may not be down the road. So I try to explain this to people who there are a lot of people who are reacting to the current administration with a good deal of well-placed and certainly well-intentioned disgust. I mean, there are a lot of things going on that I don't really care for, right? And that's just that's the fact of it. But and they want them shut down. They don't want them to speak. They want to kick them out of restaurants. They want to do all this stuff. First of all, I just want to say, we should be the people we would want our opponents to be.
Right.
So that's the first thing. But that's kind of an aside. The other thing, though, is and this is the beauty of the principle of free speech and why it's timeless, is that it can exist regardless of the regime. And my point is that if we were to enforce if we were to silence the people we disagree with now, later on, when the zeitgeist changes, there will be a precedent for that political culture to oppress us.
Right.
And we will have been the ones who made that okay. And that's not. So this is why it's important to to fight for the rights of others to say things that we hate, because it applies across the board. And the final thing I wanted to make on this particular point was that literature has been key in almost every major social change.
Right.
And a lot of it began in literature, and a lot of it was offensive when it first came out. And now we look back and like, oh, that actually was totally right. But if those people had not been allowed to write it, if they had been censored or lost their jobs or had their reputations ruined by writing it, we would be much worse off. Bad ideas have fallen by the way, and bad ideas will continue to fall by the way. But you cannot close it down and only let things through that you think are good without imposing a brand of censorship that I believe will have really deleterious effects down the road.
I agree, and it's so insidious,
right,
because it feels like I guess it's right not to talk about something if it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings and so forth, but then we stop talking about it, but the behavior doesn't stop.
Right.
The spotlight's just been pointed somewhere else.
Right.
And so by not talking about it, are we inadvertently encouraging it?
Yeah, well, it's just pretending it's not happening.
Right.
So it's like, la, 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 I don't like that, it's not going on. No,
right.
you have to look at it. You have to observe the ugly.
Right.
You have to confront the beast in order to defeat it, And I mean, pretending it's not there in the room next to you is not going to solve the problem. It just makes you feel better for a time. But ultimately, that monster is going to grow larger and larger. And
he really is under the bed waiting for you to put your feet on the floor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it hurts me to think that something I wrote hurt someone. In this specific case I'm talking about, but that was one person, and I regret any bad feelings that it caused, but there was a much bigger group of people who said, wow, good job telling that story. That was important.
Right.
And it came down, with this one person to triggers, and you talked about that, and that's unavoidable. I think everybody has triggers in their lives. Everybody has had some sort of experience, whether it, be huge or whether it be minor, that 5 years down the road, something will happen and you're right back there. I mean, it's not even always a bad thing.
Right.
If you smell cookies, it reminds you of grandma.
Right.
And you remember how much you loved grandma and how she spoiled you rotten, and and so that sort of trigger is a good one. But then when you've been through a youth of essentially torture, and you see someone else who's been through that, the first reaction very often is that almost unconscious reaction. I'm there again. I feel those feelings again. And yeah, you can understand someone, in that situation being hurt by that, but is it necessarily a bad thing that they say, okay, well, let's stick with this for a minute and see where it goes? Because ultimately Nicole conquered, everyone that did that to her, save one, but that's another story.
It's a series, folks. Stay tuned.
Yes, exactly. And it was ultimately a story of victory for her.
Right.
And I feel bad because the reviewer said that when she got to that part, she stopped reading. She didn't finish the book, so she did not see the transition from victim to victor.
Right.
And that is what makes me feel worse about the whole thing, is that she didn't see someone conquer that part of their life, because as soon as the topic came up, she closed the book.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. Like, 'cause I think you and I both know that as writers, in order to part of the the strategy on writing. I'm not saying what you did was part of a strategy, but that you have to put your character into difficult situations so that they can then come out of that. Because there is no reason to write a book if the character doesn't have something to overcome. You
Right.
can't just write about somebody having breakfast and oh, how lovely the tea was for on and on, because then
Exactly.
then you would just have a British novel from the mid 1800s. No, anyway, no. But yeah, I think one thing we can think about is, and it's difficult to say this because I am not in any way diminishing the experiences of victims, and I'm certainly not intending to anyway. But there are times when looking at a situation and saying there are things bigger than me may be helpful. That's been useful for me. And again, that does not diminish the experience. It's just it is a strategy for survivors to take as a way of self-preservation and to realize that they are part of something larger that is good, and that their negative experience does not define them. And one of the great ways to do that in whatever you're facing in life is to find books who lay this out. Find literary characters, heroes and heroines who have taken this on and defeated similar issues. I mean, the library is full of even biographies and memoirs that you can find of actual people. You don't necessarily have to rely on a fictional figure. You can find people who've written books about their own experiences. And if we're going to cut out the fact that you cannot write about it, then you say, well, what are you going to say? Unless you've actually experienced it, you can't write about it? I mean, that doesn't make any sense either to me.
Right. And how does the reader know whether the author has experienced it or not?
Right. Exactly. You can't know.
I mean, I have no interest whatsoever in writing exploitative fiction about these topics.
Right.
Because a lot of the stuff that you see on a day-to-day basis is appalling. And it's nothing I would ever say, wow, I'd really like to get into that topic and see all the ins and outs of it. But it might be something you say, I have an opportunity, I have a forum where I can talk about this and expose this.
Yeah. And it's here, this is a key point too, because we're in contact on a regular basis, and so I know that was not an easy thing for you to write. It wasn't wouldn't this be hilarious? It wasn't. That wasn't it at all.
If you remember, I struggled for several weeks on that chapter. Man,
yeah, and I don't. Horrible. Yeah, and I don't think I'm certainly not in the mind of the person who was triggered by it. I don't presume to speak for them.
Right.
But I don't think that the way you presented it was exploitative at all. It was just put out there because this is what's happening. It wasn't sensationalized. Right. It wasn't romanticized. I mean, there was.
And that's what didn't even really go into a lot of graphic detail.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No. I mean, you were very as diplomatic as you could have been, given the fact that you're writing fiction, and this was a key point in the story to understanding Nicole.
Right.
It really was. So I don't think you could get that idea in terms of exploitation from just reading that part. But you certainly, and this is why it's unfortunate that the reader didn't finish, was that you certainly wouldn't have gotten that if you had read the entire book.
Right.
Because exploitative fiction does not revel in a victim overcoming their circumstances. That's sort of anti-exploitative when you show a hero's journey. So I wish that person had read all the way through, because I think that not only would they have had a different viewpoint, but they may have found it. Again, I don't want to be I don't want to put myself in their mind, but they may have found it helpful. You never know.
Right. Oh well.
Yeah, I mean it is what it is. Really, I mean at the end of the day, we're both writers and we try to sell our stuff. So we something's not going to be for everybody. People are going to take different things from it, and I want to make clear I'm not trying to invalidate the reader's reaction to it,
and neither am I.
Yeah, certainly not. It's just a matter of kind of explaining where we're coming from and explaining maybe the role of fiction in a culture like ours, which, in my opinion, is more vital now than it ever has been. Certainly with the fact that you've got indie publishing so on the rise, and the gatekeepers of the publishing world have largely been circumvented. I mean, this is like the perfect time to experience new voices.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able to do that if we start ushering in a lot of, when I say censorship, that, it just sounds like a nuclear warning, like, oh no, the sky's falling back. But there is a danger of making people worried about, speaking their truth, which is another phrase I hate, but we don't want to discourage that in any way, and certainly not in literature.
Right. Agreed. So that was my big surprise topic that I was going to throw at you. You handled it masterfully.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, we talked about the games and the title. I did want to ask you, this is actually a question I intended to ask you on that first show, and didn't get around to for various reasons. But what is one game that you wish you were better at?
Probably the video game that I regret my lack of skills in the most right now is Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh yeah,
that was my high-end gaming console life began late last year. As far as owning, I've never owned anything. I'm trying to think. As far as my own purchases, I think the only game system I ever bought was my NES back in 1806. But didn't you play on a server and the only other person was like Thomas Edison or something? Yeah,
like that?
Yep, and he cheated. Oh man, he cheated.
He's like, I invented it. I can't. Yeah. I'm gonna steal the light bulb too. Yeah.
Yep, up, down, left, right. Screw you. But having kids, I certainly purchased my share of game systems. They were just never mine. They were always my kids. But the PS4, believe it or not, was like the old live long enough and you will get rewarded. My son bought me a PS4. I think I'm supposed to eventually pay him back for it, but
Meh.
we can edit that out, right? Just I don't want him to know that.
Yeah, you've kind of already paid for it, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you were a parent, for God's sake.
Yeah, and he's going to be 30 this year, so I've been paying for a long time. But no, I'm not downplaying that it was cool. It was very cool of my son to do that. And he did it when the game was released, so it was the Red Dead Redemption 2, package of the game, and,
okay, nice.
Everything came together. And with the great irony that the universe is capable of, about a week before he purchased that for me, my TV died. And so I played it on the TV that we usually use in our bedroom when I first got it. And it was great. I loved it, but it was a smaller screen, and it wasn't a 4K TV. So when we've finally got around to, and all this also happened right around Christmas time, so most of your finances are getting funneled towards, Christmas. Right. So we actually had to wait until after Christmas, but I got the new TV, and the first time I played that game on the new TV, I literally almost cried. It was so beautiful graphically.
Isn't it a gorgeous game?
Oh, it's amazing.
It is insane.
But I suck at it so bad. The first time I played, I think my son came over and he was like, yeah, if you want to look through, shoot with the rifle, you hit this combination and you can see really well. And I got better at it, but I still probably, less than 10% done with the game, because I've gotten, and this has been one of my video gaming boons forever, I suck at jumping. So anytime you have to span any distance, don't give me the controller, because you're going to die. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Castlevania way back, and there was a section where you had to go up a flight of stairs, jump a gap, and continue. Okay. My 6-year-old son showed me how to do it. I failed. And then my 3-year-old daughter showed me how to do
Oh God.
it, and I failed. Well, now in Red Dead, I'm at a stage where you're on the top of a train, like on the roof of the cars.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
And you remember that part?
Yep.
You're supposed
Oh, yeah.
to make your way up to the engine. Well, so far, I've managed to fall off the top of that train 25 times.
Oh, gee.
And I think there's probably more to the game after this that I'll ever see.
Nope, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You die. This game, you have a few gunfights, you rescue a guy in the mountains, and then you die in a dream. Game over. So,
All right, let's actually play a little bit of that. Because I've got a. I love one of the things I love doing is watching like stupid moments in video games,
right.
and the Red Dead franchise has been awesome for that.
For
It's,
stupid moments. That's
stupid
great.
moments. Yep. Alrighty. Whoa, infinity!
Love it when that happens. Yeah, see, I'm dead at this point.
Look at that scenery.
Oh, it's amazing. Oh my God.
Whoa! Oh God. What the hell? There's a horse. What the hell is it doing? Oh God.
Oh, I'm dead. I'm very dead.
Oh man. Okay, all right. Infinity. I'm gonna have to fix that. So, oh man, good times. Did you ever see any of the? Hold on, let me compose myself. Any clips from the first one? Like they had like mutant. Like there was a mountain lion that would occasionally get mutated with a woman, and it would like crawl through the prairie grass, like just something weird in the program, in the coding. And they came back with a patch and fixed it, which was unfortunate. But
Yeah, really, I would want that in my game. I think
up until then, oh man, so fucking hilarious.
that is great.
So you're doing, you've had a little game going on now, don't you? Something
I
retro.
do. It's actually this story is going to take a little time to develop, so bear with me. In 1981, I was living in Potsdam, New York, which is a college town, and one of the colleges in that town is Clarkson University, which is one of the top engineering schools in America, actually, in Potsdam, New York. Go figure. But their bookstore was so much cooler than the Potsdam State bookstore. I went to Potsdam State that I used to go there a lot just to look around. And they sold Avalon Hill board games. I don't even know if the Avalon Hill company exists anymore, because essentially all of their games, a lot of their games were sports-oriented games, and they were designed to do with cards and random number generating cards or dice or whatever, to do the things that video games do much better now. So I think people stopped buying them, people stopped playing them, and the company went belly up. I think they may be around, but I don't think they're producing the games anymore. But in that year, 1981, I discovered a game called Title Bout, which was a pro boxing game, and they at that point were regularly updating the game, and there were new, they would have new fighters come around. Oh, they still have a page, so I guess maybe they do.
Yeah, they're still going.
But it looks
They're the
like
one, they're the ones who made Axis and Allies. That's like my
Yeah.
favorite board game of all time.
Yep.
Oh, they've got one with zombies in it. Oh my god, I'm totally buying this. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
But anyway, the game was called Title Bout, and not only did it have a really good sampling of the current boxers who at the time were talking Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns in their prime, but it had historical boxers going back to the 1800s with guys, heavyweights like John L. Sullivan, lesser known but great heavyweights. If you don't know boxing history, you might not know this, but there is a huge pool of amazingly talented black heavyweights who never got the chance to fight for the championship. Some people know a little bit about it with Jack Johnson, who was the first black heavyweight champion, because they made a play and later a movie about him called The Great White Hope. They changed some of the names, but it was basically his story. And so all these guys are in this game, and you can fight, Jack Johnson against Muhammad Ali or something like that. Well, I bought the game, and within probably 2 weeks started adding my own modifications to it.
Natch.
So when I left Potsdam, most of my material possessions I had to leave behind in a storage facility, because when I first moved back to Syracuse, I was living in a camper in my trailer's backyard, or my parents' backyard. One of my proudest memories. But there wasn't room for all my stuff that I had collected in, I guess I lived up in Potsdam for 8 or 9 years. And, you acquire shit. It just happens.
Yep.
So I left it all behind in this storage place, figuring eventually I will go back. I'll pay the back rent on my space, get my stuff, and bring it. And in the interim, the storage place burned down.
Ooh.
Not only did like that game and all my other games that I had like a football game and a baseball game and a bunch of them that were in that Avalon Hill series, but about probably 300-400 pages of some of the best writing I ever did got destroyed in the same fire.
Oh man.
So that kind of sucked. But let's see, it would be 86, 87. I was working, the first job I got when I moved back to Syracuse was at a lumberyard, because my sights were set so high back then.
You're talking about like a place that sells boards?
This place was more a wholesaler, so they would actually saw the boards that ended up being building material and so forth.
I actually just preferred to think that you were working in a strip club or something like that.
Well, that was the night job, yeah. But eventually, it's a weird story, but my first job was feeding wood into the boiler, which ran our kilns and also heated the wood shop. And so there were two boilers. One was a backup, one was the main, but they were as big as a small house.
Oh, jeez.
Literally. And your job was every hour and a half, you had to throw in about 500 pounds worth of wood, one slab of wood at a time.
Man.
To maintain a consistent pressure so that the kilns didn't shut off and anything.
Well, I was gonna think your job is like feeding wood into boilers, and my first thought was like, well, how could that be a job? But then you're like, oh nope, they were actually as big as the house. All right.
It was huge, and I was in like buff shape back then.
Well, I'm sure,
as you can imagine,
much like you are now.
Well, almost like I am now. I'm buffer. But I was, there was lots of time in between the feedings of the thing to read or whatever. And I used to bring my journal and write, and I read a lot. And the vice president of the lumberyard came in, I don't know, my second or third week on the job to introduce himself and see how I was doing. And he walked in and caught me reading Plato. And he's like, that's not the sort of books that my boilermen generally read.
I can imagine not.
And so he ended up about 6 months later promoting me to the kiln operator, because our kiln operator left for a bigger operation, more money. And the kilns were the biggest money maker for the business. What they would do is other lumber companies would send huge loads of lumber for us to kiln dry for them. And one kiln, there were 3 kilns side by side, and one charge could net the company like $500,000.
Wow.
It was real big bucks. And he had enough faith in me based on the fact that he caught me reading Plato to train me for this job. But anyway, this guy and I ended up being really good friends, and I found out that he was a gamer also, mainly like role-playing games was his thing. But we got talking about games, and I just went on and on and on about Title and how great it was, and all the the fights I had fought and all the championships. And he actually bought me the game for Christmas that year. And so the current version that I own is that version, plus I think about 4 years after that I found one at the dollar store with newer fighters, and I bought that one and incorporated them. I haven't played the game since 2009. It's just one of those things that I got at that point in my life. I didn't really want to invest the time that playing it takes. I mean, when I play, I prepare the whole fight card ahead of time. I know who everybody on the card is going to be. I write up a pre-fight story about various aspects. Oh, this fight should be particularly interesting. They have this common opponent in the past, and I can do that because of the ridiculous amount of record keeping I've done. And I'll just excuse me for going off camera here for a second. This is,
oh my God.
This is the record book. Okay, this is the actual. Every single fighter has one or more pages in here, and every page has a brief synopsis of up to 6 fights, depending. I mean, I've redone the record keeping sheet numerous times over the years, so sometimes I use a little bit bigger font and only can fit 5 fights on the page. Sometimes I use a smaller one and can fit 6, 7. But anyway, each of those pages in there has at least 5 fights on it. Now, not all of them are full top to bottom, but when I decided to play again and dug it out and remembered, because after 10 years, a lot of the little nuances that I had created myself, I'd forgotten about.
Right.
So I got it out and started playing, and when I started to where is it? Fill out the sheets that you actually record the action on. Let me find one for you. They look like this. Okay, let me get it in the camera. Okay, and that basically allows you to keep track of every punch that's thrown in every round. Okay. When I filled the first one out, I always do a number, and the first part of the number, there's a identifier that identifies who's promoting the fight. Then the second number is which number of promotions. So let's say Don King was the promoter, and Don King has promoted 5 cards. So this will be his ID number 06, meaning his 6th promotion, and then the aggregate number fighted is since fight 1 in 1986. The first fight in this most recent bout was fight number 1110. So
oh man,
I've played the game once or twice, let's just say. But the thing that has made it so that I've been playing it since 1981 and still play it, albeit with breaks sometimes, is the amount of detail that they build into it, and then the amount of detail that I've added to it.
Right.
Because there's nothing, in the game about promoters. There's nothing in the game about the venue that the fight's going to be at, Madison Square Garden, Boston Garden, uh, and how much the tickets cost and how many tickets were sold. I've added all that to this game over the years.
Oh man.
And so when I finally, it took me probably about 2 weeks to get ready to play because a lot of the record keeping I had eventually, in '09 when I stopped playing, had moved it to computer, a lot of Excel spreadsheets, things like that. And of course, since 2009, I've probably owned 8 million computers, that keep dying on me. So
Some of them even worked.
yeah, for about an hour. But all that record keeping was on a computer that's long gone.
Oh, yeah.
And, I guess I kind of had resigned myself to it's gone. Maybe I'll start playing the game from scratch, maybe not. And was going through my obscenely huge collection of thumb drives. This whole bag is filled with thumb drives.
They all have stuff on them?
Yeah. Some stuff is just like homework of my daughter's from 2006 that I did for her.
Right.
But that's another story altogether. And some of it, is old income tax returns, all sorts of garbage. And I was just going through them with no expectation. I didn't know what I would find. One of them had all those spreadsheets. Every single one of them was there. Each weight class, the records, their hometowns, all that stuff. There was, isn't that fun?
I hear a call. Hello.
My wife was kind enough to answer that. And because, I just stumbled across it, I was able to pick up where I left off. I had to go through, again, some of the paper records and make sure that the version of the computer file was up to date, and some of them weren't, so I had to, fix all that and get the records updated and everything. But I played again. Isn't that fun?
Somebody really wants to get a hold of you.
Okay, she got it again. I don't actually even have the phone. I just have the bass in here, so I don't even get the fun of talking. I just get to hear it interrupt us over and over again. But I finally played the game earlier last week, and it was like it's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Not only did I remember how to play, and by like the fourth or fifth fight on that promotional card, a lot of the nuances of where on the sheet I would record certain things came back to me. Like there's you record if the fighter's doing a lot of clinching in the round. Every time he clinches, I make a tick mark, and then at the end of the round, if he has clinched more than he has practiced ring movement, then I'll take a point away. If he's done more ring movement than clinching, I add a point. And I hadn't remembered exactly where on the paper I usually did that until about the fourth fight. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. The ring movement goes on the left, clinching goes on the right. So all those little things came back. And by the time I had gotten to the main event, I was just like, this is every bit as fun as I remember it being. And I guess the point of this long-winded story is I think you lose a depth of creativity and imagination when these games became video games.
Yeah.
Because my son had the EA Sports, I think it was called Knockout Kings, and it was awesome. It had a lot of the same historical fighters. I don't think it had every weight division. I think it focused on the more popular ones like the middleweights and the heavyweights, basically. But it did a real good job as far as recreating the fighter style. Certainly, it looked like the fighter looked, and it was cool, but it didn't have all this other stuff. It didn't have how many people were at the fight, how much much did the promoter make from ticket sales? Was the fight broadcast on TV? How much did the promoter make in TV rights? You know, all that shit's in my game. I mean, a lot of it is stuff that I added, but it's all there. You don't get that in the video game. You just get the action. And then even then, a lot of the outcome has more to do with the player than the fighter. You know, if you're really good at playing the game, then you might, you know, beat a guy who, if this fighter A met this fighter B in real life, fighter B would kick his ass 10 times out of 10. But you're a better player. You're better at pushing the right buttons. You know how to anticipate. So fighter A, who might never have beaten this fighter in real life, knocks him out in round 1.
Yeah.
You know,
there's a guy on YouTube. It's not with fighting games. It's with one of the Madden NFL games, and he's gotten so good at it that I guess he's bored. So what he does now is goes on to the servers and finds people to play with, and he'll set a challenge for himself and like stream it. He'll say, "All right, I'm going to try to win this game with a purposefully crappy team, and I'm only going to use special teams." You know? I mean, so I mean it's entertaining at first, but at some point, like, okay, this is just not going to. Wouldn't happen. So it's the same kind of thing. He's just so good at it, it doesn't matter anymore.
right?
You know,
right? Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but no, yeah.
You lose a lot in that because, you know, one of the beauties of this game is that the results tend to follow how it would have happened historically. Now, can a schlub beat a great fighter? On any given night, it can happen in real life. I remember a guy named Oliver McCall, who was a heavyweight, who was a decent journeyman, and he fought Lennox Lewis, who was champion at the time, and knocked him out. They had a rematch, and Lennox Lewis beat this guy up so bad that he started crying in the ring. Literally, and he made the referee stop the fight because he was getting his ass beat so bad.
Yeah.
So on any given day, that can happen. It happened again when he fought a guy named I can't remember his name, but he got knocked out so bad that when they interviewed him afterwards, one of the things he said was, "Well," and I'm going to do the Lennox Lewis accent, so this is no extra charge, but it's going to be awesome. You know. In this division, if you don't beat the count, they stop the fight. And it was so obvious that the guy's brains were still spinning around. And the interviewer said to him, "Lennox, isn't that way in every division?" And he's like, "No, in this division, if you don't beat the count, they're going to stop the fight." So, you know, that underdog that, you know, should have no chance of winning sometimes, well, Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson.
If you don't keep breathing, you're gonna die.
At least in this division.
Right, exactly. Oh, man. No, I agree that as fun as newer video games are, and they certainly have points in their favor, I mean, the scenery on Red Dead Redemption, the clip we showed, did not do it justice.
No,
I mean, it is, if you're watching on a truly, and I got a full HD screen, it is like you can see, you feel for miles. I mean, you can see distant mountains, and it's anyway.
See a single stream of a campfire smoke, 20 miles in the distance, something like that. Yeah,
it's insane. The talent, Saint Denis. Have you been in there in that game?
Not yet.
No. Oh, right. I forgot you're on the train.
Yep.
Well, let me tell you, go there during a game, during nighttime, during gameplay, because they've got. It's kind of like it's set on New Orleans, I think, and it is gorgeous. The lighting and the buildings. You can go into a vaudeville theater and see a show. Like there's actually performers and they do little acts. I mean, it's crazy.
Right.
But anyway, so good stuff in that regard. But I do agree that something is lost. For example, there was a friend of mine and I, many years ago, it was probably, anyway, a couple decades ago.
Right.
We which is a long time for me when you're only 21. You know.
Exactly. So we're talking about when you were 1 year old. Okay, go ahead.
Right. We created this game, and it was on the U.S. election cycle, and it was a presidential election, and you would take your candidate from state to state. You'd give speeches. You do fundraisers. You'd use various elements and factors to determine the quality or the outcome of each rally. Like you could actually, there was a possibility of doing something stupid and have a negative, your polls drop in that particular state, you know?
Right. Yep.
We had like all of the delegate counts for all the states, and it was just, we had a lot of things. And now that I think back on it, there was a lot involved. Like, oh my, like how would you, it's just crazy. There's just so much kind of like the box, like there's so much data, you know?
Yep.
And I'm sure there are kids nowadays doing it, but it's hard to imagine that a little in a way.
Yeah. Because I've actually seen computer games that do that exact thing.
Yeah.
But probably not with the level of detail you guys had, and probably not as well. One of them I had one time was it tied in with the comic strip Doonesbury.
I remember that game. Yeah, that was one. Got it from the public library way back in the day. And I think that's one thing that gave me the idea. And I posed it to my friend. He's like, "Yeah, we ought to actually make something like that." Only we did add in a few things, and the other things that all this stuff like we're writing down. It's on cards. It's on note cards. We all this stuff. It's not like electronically presented to you. It's and that's an entire level of difficulty and intricacy that doesn't exist, and because the computer is doing all that work for you.
Right. Yeah. Let me just bore you guys one more time here.
Yeah.
With the boxing game. Okay. Let me show you. I'm gonna flip through some pages of the stuff that I created. Let me get it up here so that it's actually on camera. These are all charts that I created to add detail. Okay. What is this one? The rules and bylaws
of the World
Union of Fight Promoters. Not even the fighters. This is just the rules for the promoters. Okay. And on I go.
That's crazy.
It's ridiculous, but I love it. And there's a lot of charts that I created, a lot of research went into it too, because at one point, and I haven't recreated it with the new game, the one that I got in '86, but in the '81 game, I even had written a module on brain damage. So that if you got knocked out enough times, you could die in the ring in that version. I have not recreated that because I did so much research on traumatic brain damage, on aphasia, which is what they call the punch drunk speech. If you hear a fighter who's fought a lot and it's like, like a scrambled egg, that was a factor that could happen to the guy. And I based it all on actual research I did on the physics and the medical aspects of brain damage.
I was
going to get that video games.
Right. I was gonna say you could market this thing, but then now I'm like, people would have to actually go to school, get a degree in Scott's game.
Exactly, and to sell them all the things. I mean, the rule book that came with the game was probably about 6 pages. Okay, to include all the rules and stuff that I've written, I would have to sell the game for like $400 a piece.
The manual itself is like $150.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like as thick as a dictionary.
Yes, this has been good. I think it's probably getting to the point where people are, I don't know, tuning into Joe Rogan or something. So give them an excuse to go. But I have certainly enjoyed this, the first episode of the rebirth of the show in a way, and I hope you all have too. And
I hated it. I like the old version better.
These newfangled shows again. Two hosts. When they're turning this off. Where are my slippers?
I did want to mention before we go that I have done a lot of research recently on two-host shows, focusing mainly on the fourth hour of the Today Show with Kathy Lee and Hoda. And basically, all I've learned is that we should be wearing dresses. Other than that, I think I didn't learn a thing. Oh. But I'm game.
All right. Well, there's always in the next show. You know, we'll talk about that. We'll talk
about that off screen.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Well, thanks for actually co-hosting, Scott. First of all, this was great, and it really. See, I couldn't have done this. Like, sit up here and talk myself for over an hour. I mean.
Right.
I don't have that much to say, really.
Right.
You know, so.
But we're like an hour into it, and we're like, I guess we have to stop now.
Yeah. No. I mean, I actually think we could continue, but that's for another show, as they say. So tune in again next time. Yeah. So this will do it. Thanks everybody for joining us. We will see you again soon. Bye.
Be good, and if you can't be good,
if you can't be good.
Roll the closing credits.
Be good at being bad. I don't know. All right, we'll see you, folks.